What's up, everybody? So today we got another list video. The last video I did was my top 25 personal favorite films of all time, and that one did pretty well. I got lots of neat feedback, got lots of likes for it, so I decided to do another list, and this list is going to be the top 10 best A24 films. Now, what makes this list different from my previous list is that this list is actually trying to compile the best films that A24 has made objectively. This is supposed to be beyond my personal bias, beyond my personal opinion. This is me actually trying to evaluate objectively which films are the best films that A24 has come out with. At least the top 10. I could easily make a top 15 and it would be totally warranted. And I'm gonna be honest, guys, this list was really harsh, and it really killed me to make this list, and it was honestly much harder to put this list together than my top 25 favorite films, because I just love a lot of A24 films. I have so much appreciation for them, and to only condense it to a top 10 list was pretty difficult for me. But after hours of pure mental anguish and torture, I finally think that I was able to put in together a fair top 10 best A24 films list. And I hope you guys really get a kick out of this and enjoy it, and I hope you also somewhat agree with my list. And the reason why I love doing this is because I just love to hear what you guys have to say. So if you have any opinions you'd like to insert, or any feedback, or if you disagree with something, I highly encourage you to please let me know in the comment section. I would absolutely love that. Alright guys, so let's go ahead and get started with number 10. At number 10, we have The Killing of a Sacred Deer. This film, I've talked about it quite a bit already on this channel, but it's such a great film that I really never get tired of talking about it. The Killing of a Sacred Deer really does kind of have a special place in my heart. I went to go see it opening day at the Art Theater in downtown Atlanta. There was hardly anybody in there, so it was a pretty awesome and immersive movie-going experience. And I made an analysis video for that pretty soon after I saw it, and that video blew up, kind of. It's got over 100,000 views, and it's responsible for a lot of the subscribers that I have now. Again, this isn't a personal list, so I actually do think that The Killing of a Sacred Deer deserves to be on this list objectively at number 10. It's just such a uniquely made film that's incredibly intense from start to finish. One unique thing about this film is that, at least for me, from start to finish, it's pretty much non-stop tension due to the entire aesthetic style. The score, even at the beginning of the film, even though there's not something clearly horrible happening, it just gives you this eerie feeling of something just not right going on. And that kind of feeling is consistent throughout the entire film, and it gets just even more intense as the film approaches its third act. And I just really appreciate Lanthimos' style. It is really like incredibly reminiscent of Kubrick's The Shining, and it has incredible themes in this movie that are conveyed through its imagery, through its character writing, and just also through its aesthetics as well. It has incredible performances. Colin Farrell is awesome. I love that he's doing a lot of these more indie art house films, as well as Nicole Kidman. She's also lately she's been in the kind of indie art house game. And they're both just killing it right now, and I just really like this movie a lot. And it's also just, again, objectively, I think it's an incredible film. It's a little underappreciated in my opinion, but I do think that this film is well deserved at being number 10 on this list. At number 9, we have Hereditary. Hereditary is more of a recent A24 film. But there's no denying that it's an incredible piece of filmmaking. I didn't think this movie was perfect, but it's definitely got so much to appreciate about it. There's so much in this movie to really talk about and discuss, and the horror that's just approached in this movie was incredibly refreshing. I haven't really seen a horror film portray this much down-to-earth horror and also at the same time be a really fascinating supernatural horror as well. Most supernatural horrors just go all in the realm of the supernatural, and usually that's where it loses me. But this film really incorporated that kind of ground level, rooted to reality horror while also kind of transitioning into this third act. The third act does transition into this pure kind of supernatural horror, and I do have some slight issues with that, but overall, just within the standard of supernatural horror, I think the third act was executed very well. And on top of that, just the performances were outstanding. Toni Collette, if she doesn't get nominated this year for an Oscar, I'm going to be highly upset. And it's probable that she won't, and that's pretty unfortunate. But she was absolutely outstanding in this movie. She really conveyed true and honest grief in this film, and that's really hard to do because when she cries in this film, you really feel every ounce of emotion behind it. And it's pretty disturbing, but it's also really thought-provoking and incredibly emotional as well. So, Hereditary, great horror film, and that's why it's number 9 on my list. At number 8, we have The Witch. Now, this is a horror film that I also have kind of talked my head off about, but there's no denying that it's a really great horror film. I think people who really love horror, just like at its foundation, really got a kick out of this movie, really loved it. I really enjoyed this film. The performances are off the charts. Anya Taylor-Joy really had a breakout performance in this film, if you ask me. The way that she was able to pull off that accent just so naturally was really immersive and captivating. And on top of that, just all the themes that are in this film are really interesting. Whether it's just about pure ignorance, of a time of pure ignorance, and of a time of just kind of like pure religious authority, times where religion really completely dictated your entire belief system. And really the best thing about this film, in my honest opinion, is just the way it's directed. The way it's directed is just, again, it's one of those horror films that there's just tension throughout the entire thing. And again, that was really, honestly, it was thanks to both the cinematography and the score. Both the cinematography and the score in this movie just accompany each other so well. It really just creates this really intense and thrilling and incredibly atmospherical piece of filmmaking. And I just really appreciate the way that horror was approached in this film, because it's both kind of conventional, but it's also extremely unconventional at the same time. There's things about this film that you've kind of have seen in other horror films, but it's like it approaches it in its own refreshing way. At number 7, we have Swiss Army Man. I've been dying to talk about this movie, to be completely honest, because in preparation for this list, I actually haven't seen Swiss Army Man. So I actually went out of my way to see this film in order to actually put a more fairer list together. And I am so glad that I did, because Swiss Army Man is probably, almost definitely, the most unique movie that I've ever seen. And that's hard, because I've seen really original films, but this film is incredibly original, and it's very ballsy. Like, when this film started, right, the first 10 minutes of it had me in tears. I was just dying of laughter. This film is insanely funny, but it's also just like, what the hell am I watching? I mean, in the first 10 minutes, the way this movie establishes itself, I guarantee you anybody watching this would just be like, what is this? What did you put on? They take a really far-fetched concept that is just kind of really silly at its foundation, but they managed to not only make a great comedy out of it, but this is a very intellectually and emotionally breathtaking film. And it's really thanks to all aspects of filmmaking that really brought the script to life and made it into a really unique and interesting piece of filmmaking, because the writing is very good. There's so many different pieces of character exchange dialogues that are very human and very touching, and is very relatable to people who, again, like maybe have some tough issues with social anxiety and just kind of fitting in with social norms. And there's just so much humanity in this film, and the humanity that's conveyed in this film is very honest, and it's not all, you know, peaches and cream. This film gets pretty dark, but it's honest with its darkness. It's not just trying to be edgy. It's actually very, very honest. It's very true. And again, I was just really surprised to see how emotionally moved I was by this, because by the end of this movie, I was just like, wow, that was an experience. This movie, I have to say, is an experience. And that's one of the That's one of the highest things that I really expect from a movie is this movie going to be an experience? And Swiss Army Man is an experience. The score in this film is also very well incorporated and very touching. And again, like I said, all aspects of filmmaking really made this script come to life, and the sound and score is right up as to why this film is great. And beyond the aesthetics, the performances in this film are off the charts. Daniel Radcliffe, I would be confident and say that he actually deserved an Oscar nomination that year. And I know just on the surface, if you just watch the trailer, you probably just think I'm crazy. Like, what? You want somebody who plays a dead body to get nominated? But once you watch the film, you'll completely understand where I'm coming from. He had a very difficult job portraying the character that he had to portray in this film, and I was really impressed by that. And he also has to convey an American accent in this film, and it was spot on. You don't, not for a second, believe that he's just faking the accent, because he's British. But he really pulled out that American accent very well, I'll have to say. At number 6, we have The Lobster. Now, here's another one of those insanely original and unique films. And that's why I said, Swiss Army Man, I don't want to say it's the most unique movie that I've ever seen, because films like The Lobster exist. And again, it's just one of the most wacky and original pieces of filmmaking that I've ever seen. But it's also incredibly smart. It's a very clever satire about a lot of different things, but I guess the foundational thing is about relationships and what society kind of expects of us. And it just plays with these things in a very interesting and almost laugh out loud way at times. You laugh at it either because it's just really true the way they conveyed it, or it's just actually just kind of silly and funny. This film has a lot of genres incorporated in it. There's times where I felt like I was watching a drama, and there are times where I felt like I was watching a straight horror film. And there's times where I thought I was watching a romance, and there's times that I thought I was watching a comedy. This film just incorporates so many different genres, and for me, it meshed them together really well because it all felt very natural to the kind of awkward and weird atmosphere that was established in this film. The performances are obviously awesome. Colin Farrell again in another art house A24 movie, another Lanthimos movie. Really, really awesome. Rachel Weisz, also really, really good in this film. This is just an insanely creative and original piece of filmmaking, and also very thought-provoking on top of all that. Incredibly immersive. The aesthetics are really great, and that's why it's number 6 on my list. At number 5, we have The Florida Project. The Florida Project was one of those films where I felt like I actually escaped to another world when I was watching it. And it's crazy because it's only in Florida. But the thing is, it just captures the environment and the landscape in such a way to where once you leave the theater, you're just like, oh yeah, shit, I'm not in Florida. I'm here at whatever home state you watch this movie in. But really why I think this film is just so great is because it really captures the innocence of childhood, especially in an insanely impoverished area. But on top of conveying their innocence, it also shows how smart and mature they can also be. Some adults think that children are just incredibly naive and dumb, that they have no idea what's happening at certain times. But they're smarter than that. At least some can be. They can be very aware of what's happening. This film also just has very nuanced and complex characters in it that I really adore. Willem Dafoe's character is one of them. I thought his character was handled very well and actually serves an incredible vital purpose to this film. I did a whole analysis on his character if you'd like to check that out. But I think another character in this film that I was impressed with was the mom of the little girl, played by Bria Vinette, I believe. And I like her character so much because the film shows you it's really easy to kind of blanket her as an evil piece of shit, but the film conveys at certain moments that at her core, she does have love for her child. She's just probably grew up with piece of shit mom and piece of shit parents and had a piece of shit poor environment that she grew up in, and that's the product that we got. So, but it shows you that there is still humanity in some of these people. It's just the environment and their upbringing has just shaped them to be what we would consider just incredibly bad mothers. But yeah, this is an incredible piece of filmmaking. I feel like the little girl Brooklyn Prince got insanely snubbed at the Oscars. This entire film got insanely snubbed at the Oscars. If it was up to me, I would nominate this film for Best Picture, Best Supporting Actress, Best Cinematography. I would have nominated it for a lot more stuff, but whatever, you know. The Oscars don't want to hear a story about a poor little white girl, so there's that. At number 4, we have Enemy. Now, Enemy is, again, kind of one of those films that I felt I needed to watch before putting a list like this together. And again, I'm very glad I did, because it is a very well-made movie, very well directed. The aesthetics are incredible. Jake Gyllenhaal gives an amazing performance in this film. I don't want to talk too much about this film because I have an entire review on this that I just did a few weeks ago. So if you really want to hear more on this, please check out that review. But just know that this is a very thought-provoking film, very well executed film, and just really unconventional. Denis Villeneuve is, you know, people know him to be a very unorthodox filmmaker, but this film, I have to say, is probably his most unusual and most unconventional piece of filmmaking. Just the way that it's directed, the way that things are executed, is very ambiguous. It's a real head scratcher, and it doesn't give you much clarity, at least not in your face. You really have to think about what the film was trying to tell you to come up with your own conclusion. And I feel like that might turn away a lot of people, but yeah, I think this is a really well-made film, and that's why it's number 4. At number 3, we have A Ghost Story. Now, most people who watch a lot of my videos and know about the opinions that I've vocalized know that I absolutely adore A Ghost Story. And if this was a personal list, A Ghost Story would probably be number 1. And it's just an incredible piece of filmmaking. And this film came to life through purely its direction. Of course, there's other things that really made this film great, but the vision for this film is really what made it so beautiful. I've already talked my head off about it, but I'll go ahead and talk about it again. They took a really cheesy concept, they put a white sheet over somebody and said, oh, this is going to be a ghost that's going to be kind of peeking in through time as time passes by. And again, that can come off really cheesy and dumb, but it was so beautiful and so down to earth and so well executed that this film never ceases to jerk tears out of me. And it's an incredibly emotional film, incredibly thought-provoking, and I just haven't really seen a film like this that really captured the honest nature of time. This film really shows you that time is really everything, and it's all we know that we have. And this film really shows you that, and it really makes you take less. It really makes you take less things for granted. Fuck. Yeah, this movie really just makes you want to go to your loved one or loved ones and just grab them and just give them a big ol' hug and just never let go, because you're just like, oh, time's a bitch. This is just an insanely gorgeous film. Very beautiful piece of filmmaking. I love it so much, and I think objectively it deserves to be number 3 on the top 10 list. At number 2, we have Best Picture winner, Moonlight. Now, Moonlight, I feel like, is one of the best and most honest and truthful portrayals of identity, and at least the struggles of identity. A lot of people, like, one huge thing that kind of drew people away from this film was that, oh, this is just kind of like homosexual propaganda. But there's hardly any of that in this movie, and I think the reason why that is because it didn't want to just be about that. Really, this film is, again, it's just about identity and how the environment around you can really affect that. And it just shows you that environmental pressures often shape people to be something that they just don't want to be. And this film conveyed that in a very interesting and artistic and powerful way. I was really impressed by this movie, floored by it. The score in it is incredible. It's very touching, very emotional. And again, like, huge praise to the writer and director Barry Jenkins. I thought he did a great job with this film, and I'm glad that it won Best Picture, because I thought it definitely, in my opinion, deserved it that year. I think it's even better that it's part of a weird blunder of them getting it wrong, because now I think Moonlight's always going to be remembered because of that and fuck up. So that's pretty cool. All right, guys, it's time for number 1. This is the moment we've all been waiting for, right? Right? Nah, you don't give a shit. The number 1 best objective A24 film is Under the Skin. Under the Skin is one of the most visually thought-provoking films that I've ever seen. This film is kind of reminiscent of like the last 4 minutes of 2001: A Space Odyssey, except it's almost kind of like that the whole movie. It's just very visually interpretive, but it says so much with what's conveyed in this film. And again, the visuals in this movie are so aesthetic, and it's really immersive, and it's so engaging. Even though this film moves at a snail's pace, the visuals and its aesthetics, it just keeps your eyes glued to the screen, and you never want to look away from it. And again, like I said, on top of that, it just sends so many different powerful messages in this film, pretty much all purely through its visuals. There's hardly any dialogue in this film, and most of the dialogue you don't even understand, because I believe they're in Scotland, and all the people that she talks to have a really heavy Scottish accent, and you can hardly make out anything that they're saying. But I think that's a really interesting element to this film as well, and I'm sure a lot of film lovers have already touched on this, but it's really interesting because we're following Scarlett Johansson's character, who is an alien that was sent from another planet to apparently harvest male organs or something. But we're kind of viewing this as an alien as well, because all the language that we're hearing sounds foreign. It sounds like something that we just can't understand. And I think it's really cool because it's kind of like we're hearing this from also the same way that Scarlett Johansson's character is hearing it. Their accent seems very alien to us, the same way that Scarlett Johansson is just an alien to the entire planet. It really is an astonishing piece of filmmaking. Scarlett Johansson gives an excellent performance in this film, and it's just so awesome to see her do a film like this, because this really shows that she does care about the art of filmmaking, and it really makes me appreciate her so much more as an actress. And it really makes a lot of sense as to why the writer and director Jonathan Glazer brought Scarlett Johansson on to play this role, because one of the foundational themes of this movie is about beauty and our kind of superficial perception of it. And who better to get to convey that message to someone who most people consider to be incredibly beautiful, like Scarlett Johansson. Just an insanely enthralling film, very thought-provoking, just a real visual feast for your eyes. This film to me is an experience. Again, it's one of those films where after you're done watching it, you just are dying to talk about what you just saw with other film lovers who have watched it. The score in this film is also just incredible. It's really eerie. The score at times has this very juxtaposed nature to it, to where it's like you hear it and it just sounds incredibly beautiful with what you're seeing, but at the same time, it kind of gives off this daunting feeling. And for me, that's kind of a hard thing to achieve in filmmaking. And this, to me, is just an enthralling piece of filmmaking. To me, it's going to go down as one of the best kind of art films of all time. And I'm so glad that we have film studios like A24 that is willing to fund these films that are obviously brought on by somebody's vision, and it's pursued with no hesitation. And it's great because A24 is a fairly recent studio, and each year it's like they keep pumping out more and more of these really interesting pieces of filmmaking that you know just comes from the mind of somebody who has a vision. And I just can't wait to see what more A24 has to offer. And I really hope you guys enjoyed this list and agree with at least most of it. Again, this is supposed to be beyond my personal opinion. If this was my personal favorite list, a lot of these choices would be probably mixed up all over the place. But this is, to me, what I think, objectively speaking, are the top 10 best A24 films. Thank you so much for checking out this video and hearing what I had to say. That really means a lot to me. And if you really enjoyed what I had to say, please give it a like and share it amongst your friends. And don't forget to follow my Twitter account if you haven't already. It's twitter.com/themisfitpond. And don't forget to subscribe to the Misfit Pond channel to be updated on more film-related content.